Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bantero's webinar. We're going to be starting very shortly here. I apologize, there's been a bit of a delay, some technical difficulties. If you could please be patient. We're going to start in a few minutes here. We are just trying to get one of our other speakers on, and it's just taking a moment. So please be patient with us, and thank you for your time here. We'll get started momentarily.
Cultural program, that's what I say, right? The cultural navigator?
Yeah,
Cultural.
Well, Indigenous navigator, but just put cultural navigator.
So while we wait for our other gentlemen to get on, I think we're going to get started as we have Trudy is here and she's prepared. So maybe we'll just start doing a bit of an introduction and just doing a bit of talk. And as we wait for Michael to get on, we'll have him come and speak after Trudy. So thank you for being patient with us. And I'm sure everybody's been on a Zoom before, and it's not always perfect, but we definitely have a lot of good times after thinking about all the things we could have done. Anyways, so thank you everybody for coming. My name is Vernon. I'm with Bantero. I'm the communications supervisor. And today we have our talk for housing and about what Bantero does and really talking and focusing on culture and the importance of culture. Before we begin and before we get into it, I do want to just give a land acknowledgement. And one of the things that I've been taught and I wanted to talk about here is, oh, and I think we have Michael on. I just heard him come in, so sorry for this. I'm just going to promote him onto this to a panelist. So now we can see Michael joining us. So thank you, Michael. I'm glad that we were able to figure that out. I apologize, everyone, for a little bit of flux here, but I appreciate your, again, your generosity with us here. So we're all good to go. So as I was saying, the land acknowledgement, one of the things that I learned from our executive director, Cheryl Whiskey Jack, that she taught me when I asked about land acknowledgements, I felt sometimes I would stand there and just kind of read something by rote. And I felt very, very hollow, and I didn't like that. And so one of the things she told me is that when you are giving a land acknowledgement, there are many forms of land acknowledgements. And she made really a comment that was very powerful for me. And she mentioned that when you're walking through the river valley and you take a picture and you put that up onto Twitter or onto Facebook, she said that's an act of land acknowledgement. You're taking time to look at the land, to see the land, and to be a part of the land. And so I just wanted to maybe encourage folks today, you know, and this weekend when you're out, and we've had some nice weather, when you're out and just on the land, take a moment to reflect on it. And Edmonton is located within Treaty 6 territory and within the Métis homelands and the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4. We acknowledge this land as the traditional territories, the traditional meeting grounds, and gathering places and traveling routes of many First Nations, such as the Cree, Dene, Lakota, Anishinaabe, Blackfoot, Métis, and Inuit. So I'm going to now share my screen. You're going to be able to see our PowerPoint that we have already. And we'll get right into this presentation. The presentation is called Connecting to the Sacred, How Access to Culture Impacts Housing. Just let me share my screen and hopefully this works. There. Is everybody able to see my screen for panelists?
Oh, no. Michael's going first.
I'm going to quickly Put this into a slideshow here. Let me from the beginning. Okay. So as I said, my name is Vernon. I'm the communications supervisor here at Bentero. On our panel, we have Trudy McDonald. She is the Indigenous Cultural and Spiritual Educator. And if I have your title wrong, Trudy, please correct me. Michael is our resident manager for Orenda House. We also have on the call Terry Lynn Bigstone. She's the program manager for Eagle's Nest and Nikhik Housing. She's here for moral support and expertise should a question arise that we don't have an answer to. I will ask if you have any questions. There's the little Q&A box. Please write them in there, and we'll take those questions at the end of the presentation. So we're going to start here with Michael. So Michael, if you're able to unmute yourself. There you go.
There we go.
How are you doing, Michael?
I'm good. A little nervous. Kind of not really used to this, but I'll get it. I think I got mostly what I want to get down. I kind of wrote little points out, and hopefully it flows that way. But overall, I feel good. And I think for me, I'm going to share my story on overcoming addictions and trauma by culture, and how my culture saved me, and how having the access to the resources through Bentero, I was able to become a productive parent and a productive member of society, productive student, teacher, all that. So, okay, there's some pictures of me and my daughter. There's some earlier pictures, but I kind of didn't know how to send them properly or share them. So, but those are recent. I guess the buffalo was yesterday. Yeah, all pretty recent. So, okay, I'll start with my introduction. My name is Michael Day. I'm a Ojibwe from Serpent River First Nations, Ontario originally, but I grew up in and around Alberta, but spent a lot of time in different provinces throughout my life. So I guess I could start with my early childhood, and I'll go into that because I feel it's important for a person to acknowledge that, and I think it's a powerful story that I should share. So, I come from a single parent family, right, with three brothers. Although my mother was nurturing and really caring, we didn't really have culture, you know what I mean? And she was fleeing from domestic violence and all the abuse, right, from my dad's side of the family. So she kind of thought, well, I'll raise my boys in a different environment, right? And it, like, I feel it was the best thing that could have happened, obviously. But I mean, there was still stuff there that lingered from that side of the family where the trauma kept its course. So, me and my brothers all became kind of addicted to drugs. We were all in violence, crimes, and, you know, like growing up, for me, I didn't really have a role model, right? My brothers became role models later on in life, but like our phone was tapped. My phone was always tapped, and there was, you know, they broke into every store in the town, and we're like, yeah, like we weren't well off. We didn't have good structure at home, right? And our social environment, and obviously we just didn't have a good life earlier on in life. We're very poor. We had no role models. So at age 11, I got into drugs, right? I got pretty much heavy drugs right at the get-go, right? I started doing LSD, and that's when I kind of quit school. So at age 14, I ended up in Palmacres, my first treatment center, and this is when I was first introduced to culture, right? It was the first, it was then that I started realizing that all the stuff I'd been going through within my family system and all the broken stuff that was going on wasn't just, it was an Indigenous issue, it was a governmental issue. And I learned that earlier on because of my mom. She was an activist and she was a social worker, and always, like, even though she was lost, she was able to help us kids identify our strengths and weaknesses when it came to overcoming our traumas, right? So at 14, I started attending ceremonies and sweats, right, with elders, and that was at Palmakers, right? Now, I think that was where my fear of incarceration and jail became, you know, because I'd spend like all these days in these a QR room there, and ever since then I never went to jail, right? And my brother Isaac, I don't know, he was a counselor there. He became a counselor at that time, so he'd bring in like matches and cigarettes for me to smoke, and they'd say, "Mike, are you ready to get out?" And I'd be like, "Fuck you," you know. So I wasn't, although I was learning a lot about my Indigenous culture, I still had issues. I was still mad. I was still mad at the world, right? So, I mean, but those few months that I spent in that St. Paul Palmakers, youth Palmakers, really became a foundation for my growth overall. Growing up through my addictions, I was always able to go back to that time, those times, and use those resources and skills that I gained, because I started going to meetings in there and stuff like that. So it was a big part of where I was at. So at the age of 16, about 16, I ended up leaving Edmonton, right, and on the streets in different cities around Canada. So I bounced around a lot. I kind of thought, you know, I was going to take my guitar, I'm going to go and I'm going to, you know, live that kind of life. You know, I was going to be like Bob Dylan or something. So, no, and you know, like those earlier years, I'd go to Montreal. I lived in Montreal for a few years, northern Quebec, New Brunswick, but I always ended back up in Vancouver, right? And Vancouver was really where I really got addicted to opiates, right? And that was where I really got stuck, obviously. You know, being, you know, 16, 17 years old, right? But I was still accessing the supports needed through, like, I'd go to North Van and sweat in North Burrard, right? And then I'd go to West Van and do my AA meetings. This is at 17. Then I'd end up back down on the street using dope at night, right? So it became like that. So I was always aware that I had a problem, even in those earlier years. But yeah, I didn't really get off the streets there until I was 23. My brother came down with schizophrenia, right? I wasn't home for probably 5 years. So I got back to Edmonton when I was 23 because my brother needed support, right? And for me, that was the first time I got on maintenance meds, right? I got on methadone and thought, heck with this. You know, it was different. I didn't know what opiates were until I, you know, really became wired, and went that far down. So when I came to Edmonton, I managed to get a place with my brother, and I was always half in sobriety. I was always half in recovery, right? So I'd end up going to a Lano club for, you know, months at a time, and then I'd relapse, right? Stuff like that. But
So Michael,
yeah,
I'm wondering, like, how did you, like, when you got back to Edmonton, like, you were going through the relapse, and you know, you still had all these things happening and going on in your life. Like, how did you end up coming to Bent Arrow?
So at the age of 37, after 23 years of using, right, opiates and pharmaceuticals, I kind of, you know, I got my first child was born, right? So Alexandra, and it's, for me, I ended up getting sick. She ended up getting apprehended, right? Right, because me and her mother were not on good terms. We were arguing all the time. It was a big fight, and CFS came in, apprehended her, PGO'd her, right? I ended up with endocarditis, right? I was on my deathbed for, I think 6 months, right? And I kind of really had no option but to get clean, right? It was either get clean or die, right? And that was it. So I went out to a residential treatment McCullough Center for a year to get my health back, right? And as I was doing that, I got in contact with Bent Arrow, right? So Kakio was a big part of my recovery. As Tracy Wilson, and this is when I met Robbie, right? And we all made a plan to move me into Orenda after I got out of Palmakers and go from there.
So what all did we did Orenda and you talked about Bent Arrow, but what led them down? Because you're in such a good place now.
Yeah.
How did that happen? And what role did culture play with that?
Kakio was working with Bent Arrow at the time, I think, right? And then they started giving me parenting classes, right? I started having access to sharing circles and stuff like that through Bent Arrow, right? At first it was for CFS, right? But after a while it was I knew from all my past that I kind of needed that kind of work. So I went above them. I got myself a psychiatrist, psychologist, and I started going to meetings, and I'd bring my daughter to the meetings, right? While I was living in Orenda House, right? So I mean, they were integral for my whole growth all the way through. But then I got granted full custody when she was 2. So this first picture here, the top left picture, was when I first got her back. She was 2.5. And this is at the first cultural day. So from there, I became like when you guys had the expo center, all the Halloween parties, I'd go to salsa dancing through I just accessed all your resources. And I also talked to elders, right? So Cookham Rose and what's his name? He's passed away.
Elder Tom?
No, Elder Tom was one, but there was another one that used to go to the family center and talk with us. But yeah, crossed my mind. Okay, so yeah, and then so I started accessing all these resources. I decided to go to school, right? My daughter was in daycare, so I thought, heck with this, I'll start upgrading, right? And because I was already at this time a few years clean, right? I was able to stay. I was able to cut off before I moved into Orenda off my opiates, right? Which is a huge barrier for me, and which is why I now encourage maintenance meds either way. But I was able to remain sober through that and ended up in school. So then as this time went by, I started really enjoying being sober, but it was kind of like, at first I say clean because I was annoyed, that I was trying to get my mind off of using, right? So, and I started gaining skills through school. I got into social work, right? So I think my 4th year into sobriety, and Robbie offered me a job, right? She's like, "Oh, Mike, do you want to work at Orenda?" Right? And this whole time I was looking after Orenda on the weekends. If she'd go, I'd be looking at, watching the place and seeing how she run it. And I've watched a lot of things happen. I've watched a lot of people come and go, and I've seen why they come and go. And I've kind of always had a sense of, especially with Indigenous people, you kind of know their story because we all have similar stories. And I just became, I was just part of Orenda after a while, right? And people would talk to me and ask me for advice, and so this past year, she was really showing me the ropes, teaching me how to just talk with everybody, which I already knew, but I mean, doing the everyday stuff, right?
And yeah, and now you're the resident manager there.
Yeah.
So
And Right, go on.
I was just gonna say, for a lot of people who, or people may not be familiar with Orenda, you want to tell them like quickly, like
Yeah.
what Orenda House is and maybe what you do there now.
Okay, so what I do is I try and take a harm reduction approach, which I'm pretty good at because I understand it. And I put my social work skills along with my lived experience into what I do here. Like I kind of see stuff that maybe other people probably don't. And that way I'm able to help people out in a certain way that maybe other people wouldn't be able to, because I do have that lived experience and I do know where they're coming from. And the cool thing about it is everything I learn in my social work class, I'm able to put into Orenda, right? And all my lived experience, they go hand in hand, along with my cultural background. It's all been integral to where I'm at these days. So, yeah, it just happened. I didn't plan on it. It just the way it went for me. And I'm pretty grounded at it. I'm still learning, right? There's still a few things I gotta learn, but for the most part, I think I got a good handle on it. Some of the things I think that could be more beneficial is kind of maybe having more programming for Orenda House tenants, because for me, I'm finding it's more than just getting people to pay their rent. Like yesterday, I had to talk with a children's service worker because, just it doesn't matter, right? But there's just a lot of things that come in, and people that have other, issues other than just a place to live. And it's starting to challenge me to be more, to be able to access and give them more resources, right? And I feel, because that's what's needed, right? So as a collective, I feel that's important for us, Trudy, to really get together and start using our knowledges and keeping them connecting together.
Yeah. And we're just about finished here, but we have then Trudy to speak, and I know she's just dying to get on and speak and tell all this talk. So I just wanted Michael just to maybe just wrap up quickly, like what would you like to tell people about Orenda House, and maybe as like people might have some questions later on, we'll get to that, but what's your plan for the next little bit? What should people know?
Overall, I'll tell you what I think. So if we want to fix homelessness and we want to start housing people and giving them a good foundation to stand on while they're being housed, we got to start implementing more cultural sensitive programs that are trauma informed and take a harm reduction approach. Because I'm going to tell you, you could house all these people in tents downtown, but if they don't got the life skills to pay their rent and stay sober, I mean, you know what I'm saying? So it's important to have ongoing support when people are being housed. And that's what I would like. And that's what it's coming down for me, is being able to implement that within Orenda House, right? And for me, it's not that hard of a solution, because it just takes having a sharing circle, connecting people back to their culture, being receptive. That doesn't cost a lot of money to do that, right? So, and truth is, I know a lot of people that are homeless, and we all have we've all come from the similar backgrounds. We were abused as children, stuff like that. We've been, and we turn to addictions, right? But if you don't heal those traumas and work through your addictions, then housing's gonna kind of be hard. So I feel that people need wraparound treatment when it comes to housing. And
I don't think I can add anything. Like, Michael, that's very well spoken. And I know you were nervous. You said even so at the start of here, but you've done such a phenomenal job, Michael. And like, I think that you don't give yourself enough credit. You come with experience, you come with education, and you come with a lot of wisdom. So thank you for sharing your story and telling it to us. And we're going to move on here to Trudy.
okay, thank you.
But thank you, Michael. And we'll come back to you for some questions. I'm sure people will have some questions after Trudy, but Trudy, we'll give you the floor now, and I'm going to move to your slide.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, my name is Trudy McDonald, and I am from Fort McKay Métis Nation. I'm a mother of 3, grandmother of 7. I am a survivor of many life challenges, including the 60 scoop. Therefore, I can relate and empathize with my peers that are experiencing everyday life challenges just to survive. I have worked in the human service field for the past 18 years. So in my current and previous positions, I have gained the understanding and knowledge of the effects of historic trauma and the barriers that continue to be current issues in many communities. I have worked in a diverse community, assisting and supporting individuals with mental health issues, addictions, and supporting them, and other issues that affect their daily living. I have assisted youth, women, and men in their healing journeys by being a good support and mentor. I have participated in cultural activities that have helped to help me heal from my traumas. It's been a passion to help others by building positive relationships so they feel supported in their healing journeys. I wanted to continue my journey helping others and felt that Bandero Traditional Healing Society was a good fit for me to continue this journey and work with others to reach their goals and finding housing. I started out as a housing support worker. Then I was persuaded to apply for the Indigenous and Spiritual Educator, even though I didn't have the confidence in myself, but others did. So I was grateful for that. So in saying that, I am the Indigenous Cultural and Spiritual Educator in Nikhik Housing First Program and have been since June. Nikhik Housing First Program is in partnership with Homeward Trust and Bandero Traditional Healing Society. The principle of Housing First is that every person has the right to a safe and secure home. The goal is to assist Indigenous individuals, families in securing safe, affordable, appropriate, permanent housing. Also to develop a plan to identify challenges and their strengths. Then we will provide resources, supports, and set goals to achieve success. Nikhik has unique supports such as trauma support, peer support, and cultural support. The cultural support is especially important to our Indigenous participants as it assists them in their journey to overcome barriers that they may face. My role is to connect participants back to their culture. We attend ceremonies such as sweats, round dances, powwows. They also engage, as you see, arts and crafts. And that is a very important part of the activities. Not only that, but the conversation and the interaction with each other. They're able to relate to each other, support each other. And a lot of it, is just sitting there and just joking around and telling each other's story. That's what I enjoy listening to. We also identify cultural events in the community, the resources in the community, so that we can relay that information to the participants so they can access not only our resources, but others in the community that may be closer to them. So just in speaking with a few of my participants in cultural, asking them why in culture is important to them. So I just kind of want to read a few things if I can from my participants. So it says, I believe that having cultural part of the program is beneficial to bring them back to their roots, to have a sense of belonging. A lot of our people without homes are running from pain, of trauma, of being stripped of their identity. I believe having cultural, easy, accessible will bring them back to their roots and have a sense of belonging, then to begin to work on bettering their true self with the help of culture. So here's another one. These are really wonderful sentences from these participants. It is important to me because I've been so disconnected with my culture for most of my life, and I've wanted to get reconnected. I love learning new things about my culture. I find peace within this. Another one I have here is Having your culture and belief system is very important as an Indigenous woman. Many people walk with their modernized mindset and left their spirit behind. Walking with both can lead to finding your higher self. My culture is very important to me, especially being a woman. Lots of women, daughters go missing out. They go missing out on the ceremony. The teachings are very lost. Being spiritual and cultural, there's many factors why we should go back to our culture and belief systems. So I find that, yes, talking to a lot of these participants, that they've lost themselves, and that's what they're trying to find is themselves and their spirits. So to conclude, I believe that the cultural navigator is much needed to help repair the harm and trauma caused by residential schools and give each participant a sense of belonging. So that's all that I have for my for my presentation, but I do have like the pictures here that shows that, you know, we sit around and we do these activities, and like I said, we sit and talk and just relate to each other and share our feelings and share our resources and share what we know. And I think that's just building a better community overall, and to have fun. It's always fun to laugh.
Trudy, you said one thing there, I think that was really powerful. I think it was one of the participants talking about how people, we leave our spirits behind. And I think that, for me, that was very powerful to hear. And I wonder if we could just kind of explore that a little bit, like what the housing programs, like what do we do at Nikhik and Eagle's Nest that allows people to find their spirit?
Well, right now we are offering a life skills program. So a lot of people, you know, they really don't know how to navigate. You know, once they have a home, they're excited, and that's great. But where do they go from there? So we are there to support them. We go into their home. We have follow-up support workers. We have trauma support workers. We have the peer support workers. We have another Indigenous worker coming on board. You know, so we have started a life skills program. So we go into these homes and we sit with them and we talk with them and we find out where they need help and where do we start. So we kind of gauge them with that. I've given them some books, some journals to write, and just everyday events, something happy, something sad, something that they're going to tell us, where they want to start, what they need to focus on. And I'm finding a lot of people are struggling, and a lot of it is budgeting. That's the biggest thing that's coming up, is budgeting. They don't get much money. So how do they budget what they have? Be able to pay their rent, buy groceries for their kids that's going to last for a month. And, sometimes they can't. So what else do they get to, what other resources are out there? So that's part of my job is to, research, find these resources and pass it on to them so that they're able to do these things for themselves and feel good for themselves, that they're not being enabled, that they're actually doing it themselves, that they learn, that they're teaching their kids these things as well. Did you want to end?
Yeah, I think that's I see that we have some questions here, so I'm going to pull those up. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen now, and I'm just going to look at these questions that people have been asking. So we had a question about closed captioning. Missed that earlier, I apologize. And we have someone, Michael, who's thanking you for sharing your experience and then talking about how powerful it was to hear that. And I echo that. It was thank you again for sharing your experience, Michael. And I think that, you talked about how there's all these things that we need to consider before, like once a person is housed, right? There's all these things. You talked about harm reduction. You talked about being trauma informed. And I think, Trudy, in what you just said too, echoed a lot of that, right? There's a lot of this that goes, it's all interconnected, right? There's not just one thing that's going to fix it all. What we find, and Bent Darrow, I think, has found, I think you both brought it up in his culture, and how people, and that's why we called this whole presentation, connecting to the sacred, because we're as human beings, we need something to connect to give us purpose, to give us belief in ourselves, and give us connection. And we just have some more thanking from Brandon says, thank you for sharing, Mike. Incredible amount of courage and resiliency, and absolutely. And then we have another comment here saying, thank you for your experience, Michael and Trudy. And I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. If you do, please send them in. We have a few minutes left, but Michael or Trudy, I don't know if either of you had anything else that you wanted to add that maybe you weren't able to.
Well, I can say that, I grew up in the system myself, and, in the foster system. So I didn't have my culture either. I was taken away from my family, and I didn't reconnect with them until I was almost in my adulthood. And I still, at that time either, I didn't know anything about my culture, where I came from, my identity. I was, struggling with that. I didn't find that until I started actually working with an Indigenous organization. And that's when I started learning more about my culture. But coming to Bandera, I think it really helped me. I've learned a lot of things, and I'm still learning about culture. I don't know everything about it. I'm learning as I go. And I think that's great, walking with the client side by side and learning together. And so I've learned to make ribbon skirts, and I'm continuing to do that, and I'm teaching other people to do that. And that I find that very, the feeling is great, to learn that, and then having to teach somebody else, and then they go and teach somebody else. That's great. That's what we're about.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned the ribbon skirts. I know that we do some designing and making of ribbon skirts with some of our participants and other stuff like that at Bandera again too. Because like you said, you can teach that to someone, then they can go and teach that to someone. And I think that you do that really well. I think, yeah. Oh, Michael, and did you have anything else that you wanted to add too? No,
I'm just happy to be where I'm at these days, right? I'm 7 years sober. I'm pretty grounded in my recovery, right? I'm still a single parent, and I'm a nurturing parent, caring parent. I've been able to, through the help of my school, to you learn a lot in Indigenous social work on how to heal your traumas, and I don't take back a day in my 7 years of my parenting. One thing I never doubted was my parenting skills. So I'm happy with that. And my position here, I don't doubt that I'll be good at it, although there's little barriers with writing notices and stuff, and I find it's hard to evict people maybe, but for the whole building as a whole, you've kind of got to do it once in a while, right? It's part of the thing. But I try to meet people where they're at. I think I'm really good at it, but you still got to be firm in how you deal with people at times. You can't always be too lenient and say, oh, it's okay. But you if you get that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Vernon, I just wanted to see if you'd be able to show my full clippings, all my pictures. Because I think, in reading the ladies that did the skirts, and they had a voice in what they wanted to say about that too, about the culture with the skirts.
Yeah. Let's go right to that.
Thank you.
Green touchers here. Yes. So we have one of the participants, she says, ribbon skirt making, being a part of the ribbon skirt making class was such a great experience. I loved the class and I love learning about my culture. Trudy was an amazing teacher. She was patient and really taught us well. I really enjoyed making the ribbon skirt in class and hope to do more in the future.
You did a great job on it.
It's really nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's one more.
And yeah, this one too.
I've always wanted a ribbon skirt, and when I was asked to make one, I was so excited. It was an awesome experience on how to learn to make one that I want to start making more. Now I have one for when me and my daughter go to round dances and powwows. because my daughter has one and she asked, "Where's mine?" Now I have one to dance with her. That's beautiful.
Well,
That's such a nice sentiment.
Mm-hmm. It was great.
I think it's great because like you're right, because like there's something now that mother shares with daughter.
That's right.
And
Mm-hmm.
it continues, right? And that's I think we're one more thing here I wanted to share. If anybody's looking to connect to learn anything more about the Housing First program, a number there that you can connect with Brett, or of course with our lovely partners at Homeward Trust as well. If you have any questions or anybody's has any questions about this presentation, or tomorrow you wake up and you say, "Hey, I just thought of something," please feel free to message us at Bentero. You can always message us on social media. Our social medias are at Bentero YEG. So you always can reach out for us there. Learn more about our programming at our website is bentero.ca. And I'll give a plug to the city of Edmonton. They will have their presentation here on November 28th, which is Monday. So if you haven't got your registered for that, please do. And I think we're going to end here, folks. And I wanted to thank Michael and Trudy for your time of putting in the groundwork to even make these presentations and then coming here. And I know that not everybody likes public speaking, but I think that you both are great leaders in Bentero, and you both have strong voices. And thank you for bringing them today. I'm glad I didn't have to do this presentation because I don't have the knowledge you do. So my biggest fear today was that either like the computers wouldn't work and I'd have to be left scrambling trying to figure out what to say, because you both speak better than I do about your program. So thank you so much for that. And thank you to everyone who came today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. We started here. It would go off to a little slow start, but I think we really had a great talk with our presenters. So on that note, your lunchtime is coming to an end here. So I'm going to let you have a little bit left. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and have a lovely and a safe weekend, everyone. We wish you well and be well with your families. Thank you so much.